On Civic Center TV. Welcome friends and neighbors to the Splash Live on Civic Center TV. I'm Tyler Kieft. Thank you for joining us after a difficult day in West Bloomfield Township on Thursday, where early in the afternoon, one person drove their vehicle into Temple Israel, then opening fire with a rifle on staff inside of the building. Temple Israel security sprung into immediate action, engaging the assailant and neutralizing the threat. However, a fire had already broken out as a result of the crash into the building, billowing smoke throughout the facility. An immediate evacuation occurred with all students and staff safely exiting the building. The lone injuries, the head of security who was struck by the attacking vehicle, according to Sheriff Michael Bouchard at a Thursday evening press conference, as well as 30 first responders treated for smoke inhalation. The words of the day: preparation and partnership, credited by community leaders and law enforcement for the quick response and ultimately the safe resolution at Temple Israel.
And thank law enforcement for the trainings that we have all done at Temple Israel, at Federation, throughout the community. The teachers, security team, wonderful job. Why? Because they've trained us.
Being prepared, said Rabbi Joshua Bennett, gave Temple Israel's team an advantage, clearing the building swiftly and safely.
Because of the work of our security team and because of the work of our staff, our children just thought an alarm had gone off and they were playing with their family and friends, and really that is a remarkable answer to when you are trained as a community, this is what happens.
Partnership went beyond training Thursday in West Bloomfield as Temple Israel's neighbors at Shenandoah Country Club opened their doors to staff and families for safe shelter in the wake of heinous violence.
We can't say enough thank yous to the people around us who care deeply about what it means to be part of a community like West Bloomfield. This isn't only a Jewish issue, this is a community issue. And if we don't understand that and seek further partnerships with people around, then we're missing an opportunity today.
Now the community carries on together. Through continued partnership, says Steve Inber, unity will prevail.
This is an attack on all of us and our way of life. You should all be free to pray wherever you want. This is not just about us, this is about the community and how we should live as humans.
Ultimately, that was that partnership that helped the day, not only in the response from our law enforcement to bring many different agencies from both local and state as well as federal agencies to respond and begin an immediate investigation, but those partnering in the community to provide assistance to those inside the building at Temple Israel. And of course, those stories we've yet to hear about just yet, and we'll hope to cover today and throughout the days ahead in our community, of those providing support after the fact to help our community recover and to help those in the Temple Israel community cope in the wake of this tragedy. It can be a very tough time for people to talk about these events, to have something like this that you never hope happens in your community, you hope you never experience, and you hope you don't hear about very often. But unfortunately we do, and unfortunately in this case, it was our community this time that was struck by this by senseless violence at Temple Israel on Thursday. Joining us now to explain some ways that we can perhaps begin those conversations with our family and provide support to our community is Birmingham Maple Clinic therapist Carrie Krawick. Carrie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on in a difficult time, and especially with your expertise in family therapy in particular. This can be a really difficult conversation, in particular for parents to have with their kids, especially when it happens in your community. So it's a very big question. It's a loaded question. Where should parents perhaps start in having those conversations with their kids?
I actually love the way you recognize this, because I think one of the first things is, of course, parents need to take care of themselves. You hear it all the time, but when you're in the airplane, when the mask comes down, you have to put it on yourself before you help anyone else. And so it is so important for parents to find ways to regulate themselves before they start touching base with their kids, even if they're experiencing their kids in a high degree of need. For kids, depending on their age, it's so important to ask them what they know and what they've heard. Before you interject any new information, try to sift through what they've heard and what they think they know, and try to make sense of that. And then as you can clarify what's real and what's not real, then there's an opportunity to move forward after that.
There may be a little bit of irony, unfortunately, in me asking this, but there's so much coverage of this that you'll get from in your community, so much you'll get from the local, state, national media, a lot of speculation. What's your advice in terms of people navigating that, keeping in the know, knowing what's going on, especially when it's happened close to home in their community, without overwhelming themselves with information that's quite sad?
Sure. I mean, and what a great question. So, like, in one part, like, we are all designed to connect with each other during periods of stress. And I think just talking to my colleagues that are of the Jewish faith and stuff, I mean, they're answering tons of text messages, tons of phone calls from their clients, from their friends. So there's this desire to connect. And there's a desire to like reach out to media for also that connection. And so connecting during one of these stressful opportunities is good, but there does also need to be an opportunity for rest. We need stress and rest. So there does need to be a time where we take a pause or a break and say, hey, look, we are going to shut off the phones for the night, or we're going to turn off the TV for the night. And we need to like kind of cleanse like those moments, because there are times to dig in and then there are times to like reprieve. And so we need both stress and rest, and we cannot sustain stress. So you do need to book in periods of rest.
What was quite profound in the wake of what happened on Thursday at Temple Israel was the immediate support that came out from the community. We think especially about those right across the street at Shenandoah Country Club, predominantly a Chaldean entity where it houses the Chaldean Community Center. It's those of a different faith. They're mostly Iraqi Christians, and they provided immediate housing, immediate support. They fed children. So many stories of that already on social media. In the immediate wake of something as harrowing and as heinous happening right here in your community, psychologically, what does that immediate support from your friends, from your neighbors, from complete strangers mean to people that experienced that firsthand?
Connecting is good for both the giver and the receiver. So like during periods of stress, the stress hormones, the oxytocin, the just oxygen flow through the body. So even from a physiological standpoint, connecting during periods of stress is both good for the giver and the receiver. So, I mean, it was so amazing, right? Like to see the community and even the desire. There were people who desired, some went to the scene to, get their children or whatever, and some just went to the scene to connect. And although that can interfere, it's also so important to know that like making connections, physical connections, whether it's gentle physical touch, whether it's, hey, I'm thinking about you, I saw this thing and it reminded me of you. Connections are stress relieving. And so like during a period of stress, it's important to acknowledge that making connections are good for all of us.
Carrie Krawick is joining us, a licensed family therapist from the Birmingham Maple Clinic, on today's edition of the Splash Live, as we get the community's reaction in the wake of the attack Thursday at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield Township. Carrie, you mentioned so much about connecting in the aftermath, good for those that are reaching out and good for those that are being reached out to. So many people want to provide that support, especially to those at Temple Israel, to those in the local Jewish community, so heavily and directly affected by this act of violence in our community. But there is right and wrong ways to go about that in a way that's sensitive, that's empathetic, that's providing support without overwhelming those directly traumatized. How do you balance that?
Right. I mean, I think part of it is acknowledging your own insensitivity, and to say like, I'm doing my best, like I'm feeling compelled to do something or say something, but I'm not certain it's the right thing or the right time. I mean, I think offering yourself that little asterisk and offering that to a person, kind of taking a bird's eye view, and like, you might want to say something and just say it, impulsively, but if you could like kind of take an inventory of, well, here's what I want to say, and here are all of my guesses how it might be received. And then presenting that as almost like little hodgepodge of like, here's really what is going on in my heart. And this is how it's coming out of my mouth. But if it's not right, please correct me. Please tell me. Please help me help you better.
And there are some subtle ways too that people can simply just reach out and be like, look, maybe I don't know how you're feeling in this moment. If you're willing to immediately have me speak to you about this? Or if I just want to say I'm a listening ear, what are some subtle ways you can present that to somebody maybe in the Temple Israel community or others that may be mourning what happened here in West Bloomfield?
I think it's exactly like what you said. I think it's saying like, I want to be a safe person to you, and I may be an imperfectly safe person to you, but like, please allow me to be that. And if you need me, I'm here for you. If you need me to, care for you in some kind of way, like I'm ready and available. And like, I just think, like you said, is offering that, like, it won't be perfect. And sometimes well-meaning gestures get misread or misunderstood. So just being able to sort of like see like outside of yourself, this is what I want to do, but this is how it might come across, and present both of those to the other party, and then let them choose. And if they say, look, I'm good, I'm overwhelmed, I've talked enough, I've heard enough, I've seen enough, then respect it.
If you want to reach out to Carrie and the team at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, their website, birminghammaple.com, as we discuss how to begin coping with what happened in West Bloomfield Township for those directly affected by the attack at Temple Israel. Carrie, for those that are directly affected, they're going to cope at a number of different speeds in a number of different ways. It is important, as you mentioned, to be able to reach out, to have those open avenues, but to do it at your own speed. What's your advice for those young, old, across all ages and all sectors of our community to perhaps get back out slowly and reach out to their community for that connection that you mentioned can be so important in times like this?
Sure. Don't assume that it's going to look any certain way. I mean, even my own children are students in Bloomfield, so they were in lockdown yesterday. And although they're not of the Jewish faith, they did experience the lockdown. So like they were different last night. One was exceptionally tired. One was exceptionally hyper. So, I mean, I think for parents, it's not so much thinking that your kid's going to be a certain way. It's sort of being ready for any way that they are. And one of the things we want to see is that it dissipate over time. So of course, today you might have a lot of questions or a lot of agitation or a lot of nerves. But what we'd like to see is it incrementally gets smaller the days as we move away from this. And if you're seeing that intensity stay the same, that would certainly be an opportunity to have an evaluation by a therapist or psychologist or someone to say, hey, like we would just after any kind of event, we would like to see it trickle towards normalcy. And if it's not, then it definitely needs to be revisited by a professional.
And normalcy is going to look different for everybody directly involved that may have been there on site, had family members there on site, have connections to our community, both here in West Bloomfield Township, throughout the state of Michigan, and all across the globe with connections close to home. Carrie, I want to thank you very much for joining us and for providing this advice that is very much in need for many in our community today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Carrie Krawick is a licensed therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, joining us on the Splash Live. If you want to get in contact with her, if you're in need of some assistance at this time, you can contact her and the team at the Birmingham Maple Clinic for some advice at birminghammaple.com. As we continue to get the community's reaction in the wake of what happened at Temple Israel, the attack on Thursday, where an assailant all alone had driven a vehicle into Temple Israel and then opened fire in the building as well. It was quick response from those on site and from first responders, as well as those springing into action to lend a helping hand, that made this a safe outcome in our community in the event of an unprecedented day in West Bloomfield Township, the largest Reformed Jewish congregation in the country, under a siege on Thursday afternoon in West Bloomfield Township. Leadership across the community already providing their reaction, their words of support, reaching out to the community both on Thursday and continuing to the present at this time. Two individuals already in action doing that are part of our Jewish community here in Greater West Bloomfield. One is a member of the congregation over at Temple Israel. We're joined now by West Bloomfield Township Treasurer Terry Weingarten, as well as Debbie Binder, our Township Clerk, who is a member of the congregation at Temple Israel. Thank you both for making time for us this morning.
Thank you, Tyler, for covering such an important story.
Yeah, and thank you for both being with us, as it's a difficult time for you as lifelong residents of West Bloomfield, as people that are very heavily involved, not only in the community at large, but in the Jewish community as well. Debbie, I want to start with you because you have a unique perspective on this as someone who is a member of the Temple Israel community. How is your community there at Temple Israel holding up in the immediate aftermath of what happened on Thursday?
You know, I can't say I haven't had as much opportunity to interact other than kind of what I have seen as well.
Sure.
But I can say one thing about Temple Israel and about the Jewish people in general. We are resilient, and we will rise above this too. It's a very unfortunate setback. It is the proliferation of anti-Semitism that we're experiencing now is just, untenable and upsetting. But the Jewish people do rise above it. We're resilient. We've had to fight for many years and will continue to do so. So I am definitely a member of Temple Israel, and this even hit maybe a little harder because that was me for at least 5 years with each kid, walking them into Temple Israel preschool. And, two of them went through kindergarten, one went through the 4-year-old program. So we have a strong connection with that preschool. I have cousins who teach in the preschool. I've known people who work there. I was confirmed at Temple Israel. I was married at Temple Israel. My kids went to preschool and religious school. So it really is part of my existence is growing up at Temple Israel. So it hits very close to home. But I am confident in that our Jewish community will be resilient like we've had to do many times before, sadly.
And Terry, we've seen the resilience of other communities nearby and have lent a helping hand to them. We think about the communities at Michigan State University just a few years ago, a couple years before that, the Oxford High School community, and that community very similar in nature to what West Bloomfield is and Greater West Bloomfield is, a close-knit community, a family in its own right. How is that element of the character of West Bloomfield Township already evident in what you've seen in just less than 24 hours at the time that we're speaking now since this event happened, and how will that help strengthen the community going forward in the wake of this?
Yeah, so we're so lucky we have such a wonderful community, a very interfaith, diverse community. There was actually an event going on at Shenandoah that day, and Clerk Binder was just commenting to me about how much and I totally agree with her, appreciate that Shenandoah stepped up and helped and welcomed, our members over at Temple Israel as they moved from a location that was very dangerous to a location that was very welcoming. We had wonderful response from our public safety, both our police and fire. Everyone was just rushing to get involved and help, and just the outpouring of support from the community for all of us. I mean, I know I can speak for myself, but I also know Clerk Binder told me our phones were ringing off the hook. Our texts were blowing up yesterday, but just people from our community that cared, and people all over the world. I heard from people Israel. I heard from people from Europe. I mean, it was really kind how many people reached out to see if we were okay. And all we cared about were the people over at Temple Israel okay. So thank God for such a good outcome, because it was such a terrifying day.
And Debbie, I want to go back to you because unfortunately you have experience in the wake of these tragedies and heinous acts of violence like this. Luckily, the tragedy that occurred at Temple Israel didn't involve deaths of people on site, as was not the case at Michigan State University, where one of your children did have an experience on that day sheltering in place, very similar to what had happened in our community with the shelter in place. How does that help you inform your path forward, not only as a member of our local government and as a parent, but as a member of the Temple Israel community and a very heavily involved member of the Greater West Bloomfield community, as you provide that personal support to individuals that call West Bloomfield home and hold it close to their heart?
It helps me from a place of understanding and being able to understand the experience of the early information that's unclear or conflicting as things are coming out, and you are seeking information and there isn't really accurate information. In one moment, the shooter's, gone. The next moment, they're not. When my son was barricaded in the basement of the STEM building at Michigan State during that that incident, we had about 4 hours where we had no contact. We were afraid to call. We didn't want to. We didn't want to have the phone ring. We didn't want to have a light go on. We didn't know what was going on, where he was. And that 4 hours of not knowing was absolutely harrowing. And I think that's what I connected to this and thinking of these families who dropped their kids off. And, I was that family. I understood dropping off their little, their little kid at Temple Israel preschool, and for that time period, the not knowing and how horrible that was. They're in good hands. They're at a place that they're loved, and that they're at a place that they're cared for. And I think what we saw happen yesterday is Temple Israel had prepared for this for many years. And, they prepared for a day they hoped would never come. But when it did, that preparation paid off. And we've heard Sheriff Bouchard say for years, hope and prayer, not strategies, preparation is. And we saw on the front end that preparation paid off. Those kids and the staff at Temple Israel were, left alive. And I think that everyone jumped into action based on the training and preparation that they had. And it shows us the importance of these times and the uncertainty, what needs to be done. But I do think, going back to your original question of the connection, I think it was an important part of me understanding what people were going through with that time period of not knowing, and the extreme joy and relief that finding out that the kids and the staff were all okay and the only deceased was the attacker. So I think it gave me that perspective. And I want to echo, as Treasurer Weingarten had mentioned, the community that stepped forward to make sure that our Jewish community felt, embraced and welcomed, and what Shenandoah did in bringing people from Temple over there. I spoke with my cousin last night who does teach at Temple Israel, and she couldn't say enough for the response from our public safety and how quick they were, to how they were taken care of and treated at Shenandoah at a time of great uncertainty, that they felt like there was a community behind them. And I think that speaks to our community. And I'm really proud, as is, Treasurer Weingarten has mentioned, we're just really proud that our community stepped up and proved the resilience that unfortunately we shouldn't have to, but obviously that training paid off in showing that we have that resiliency.
And the superstars in that response are the team at Shenandoah. So many stories of people saying our kids went over there and they were just playing. They were having fun. It was like it was a regular day. They felt at home there. The people at Shenandoah cooked for us. That says a lot about that community. It says a lot about the Chaldean community. But Terry, I want to go back to you, Treasurer Weingarten, because it says a lot about the value of diversity in our community, not just on paper, not just the number of different religious and ethnic groups and racial diversity of our community and how the community embraces that, but the way that it does truly value that diversity, even within the faith community. We think about the Greater West Bloomfield Faith and Community Alliance already reaching out across interfaith alliances to provide that support. What does that say about the way that West Bloomfield values diversity and the way that our interfaith communities connect, especially in times like this where others are mourning?
I think that's a really good point. I feel West Bloomfield is quite unique. Debbie and I have both lived here since we're little kids. We've pretty much spent our whole lives in West Bloomfield, and West Bloomfield has changed, and I would say for the better. I really like that we're a welcoming community. I mean, on paper, but in practice, that we're a welcoming community, and we welcome people from every background, and we're neighbors, we're friends, we work out together, we eat lunch together, we see each other, we go to each other's houses of worship. I myself have been part of an interfaith group for many years called Wisdom, and it's a women's interfaith group. And our group works with the Interfaith Leadership Council and other organizations. And then, like you mentioned, locally, we have an interfaith group. So I feel like that's really a part of the fiber of our community and certainly a core value for myself. I think it's so important. And even on our boards and commissions, we've put a great deal of thought into finding the jewels of West Bloomfield, and there's so many of them, and encouraging people from all different backgrounds. I know Debbie does that when people come to her counter. She'll say, oh, have you thought of running for a board or commission?
Of course.
And so we have a great variety of diverse, brilliant people on our boards and commissions too, which helps us come up with better ideas, right? because when you have diversity, it really can help you come up with ideas you never thought of. You don't want everyone with the same viewpoint. I always tease Trustee Patton. I say to him, thank God you're on the board, sir, because you and I think so differently. And sometimes I come to a meeting and I'm sure I know how I want to vote. And I listen to you and I say, nope, he's right. And I think that there's a lot of that civil discourse that goes on in our community and a lot of camaraderie. And I think it really makes us a very, very special place to live for.
Terry
And
Weingarten
Tyler?
is with us along with Debbie. Yes, Debbie, please.
If I can add one thing to that, because we always like, you know me, I always like to invoke Pastor Jack when I can.
Of course.
And Pastor Jack always commented on West Bloomfield as an inclusive community, that there's a place for everybody. And I think that's what we all experience, and we see that inclusive community come together when one community does have a crisis. They all come to respond and assist the community that's in crisis. So I just like to make sure we reference Pastor Jack.
And whenever we walk into the library side of West Bloomfield Town Hall, we see that plaque with Jack Freed there, and we think about his kindness, we think about his compassion so much that he presented to not only his faith community in the Christian community in West Bloomfield, but so many across different faiths. And that's really what this is all about. It's not just the diversity of our community being a point of pride. It's that those communities, the Muslim community, reaches out to the Jewish community in a time like this and says, we are here for you. This is not us. This doesn't reflect us, based on some of the reports of the individual suspect that's alleged from those events. And we want to provide help. And that happens, too, from other communities within Greater West Bloomfield as well. Debbie, before we let the both of you go today, I want to just get one last statement from you on what that means to West Bloomfield, having such different ways of support, methods of support from people, and how supporting our community is and loving for its neighbors.
I'm not sure what the question was, though. Just if you can clarify what the question part of it.
What does all this response, and just the way that in times of tragedy and times of sadness, all different areas of our community do come together to provide that support, what does that say about the resilience of West Bloomfield, and why this moment will strengthen the bonds that are already strong in our community?
Well, I've said for a while now that we've had, when you look at a community, in a community that is inclusive, it's kind of like a family. In a family, you have different people, different personalities, different opinions, different everything, but you're one family. And I think in a West Bloomfield, we have different, people from different backgrounds, different ideas, but we're one West Bloomfield. And when times of tragedy do come, we are there to support each other, because at the end of the day, we are one West Bloomfield. So I think that becomes an important connecting piece, and maybe one of the things that we all need to do is look more at our similarities than what makes us similar, than what makes us different, because at the end of the day, we are one West Bloomfield.
Terry, I want to give you one last moment here. We got about 30 seconds left. Your lasting message for the community as we continue to cope with the immediate aftermath of what happened at Temple Israel.
I agree with Debbie, and Debbie coined the phrase "One West Bloomfield," which I love, because that is what we are, right? We're, like I said, we're friends, we're neighbors, we're coworkers, and I feel so close to so many of the communities here in West Bloomfield. I really feel like we are one family that supports each other's in time of celebration and in times of crisis. So I thank everyone for the outpouring of support and love, and we appreciate you. We appreciate all of you. Thank you.
And we appreciate the both of you joining us today for your insight as your community here in West Bloomfield, the Jewish community, and as leaders of our community continue to provide different angles of support to those in need in West Bloomfield at this time. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Our thoughts continue to be with you and with the community in Temple Israel at this time as the community continues the immediate aftermath of what happened, and providing that support and that insight to its neighbors, something we saw on display on Thursday in our community as so many reached out to each other to provide that immediate support, both in housing individuals as they sheltered in place and evacuated safely from Temple Israel, and the support that came in from all around the area, all around the state, the country, and the world for West Bloomfield Township in the in the aftermath of the heinous act of violence that occurred at Temple Israel on Thursday. I want to bring in our state representative, Noah Arbit, who, like our township clerk and treasurer, Debbie Binder, and Terry Weingarten, a lifelong resident of West Bloomfield Township. He's also a lifelong member of the congregation at Temple Israel. Noah, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, good to talk to you, albeit not under the greatest circumstances. I asked this of Debbie early on. So far, in terms of the less than 24 hours since this event occurred at the time that we're speaking, how are you, your family, and the Temple Israel community holding up at this time?
I'm extremely exhausted. I barely got any sleep, as you can probably tell by how I look, and I'm just extremely drained, but it's nothing compared to, what the families at the preschool experienced yesterday, and the staff and rabbis at Temple Israel, and just, the community at large. I think, there's still a sense of shock, at least for me a little bit. I haven't had the opportunity to decompress. Hopefully in time I will in the next couple of days, but, it's still kind of go. But it's, something out of our worst nightmares.
And in the immediate wake of what had happened, so many outcries of public support, and not only that, but actual tangible reaching out from the community right across the street at Shenandoah, knowing that there was that helping hand, that loving arm across the street, reaching across not only the street physically at Walnut Lake, but across religious ties as well. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think it means everything. The fact that, the Chaldean community showed up for us, when we needed help, right? And they always have, and we always will for them as well. And I think it just speaks to the ties that bind our community here in West Bloomfield together. It's somewhat surreal. When I was campaigning for office, one of the things I would tell people is, I'm tired of West Bloomfield being an afterthought in the policymaking conversations in Lansing. And, I'm running to, put, some energy and vigor behind our community, and to make us, closer to the center of policymaking in the state capitol. And, West Bloomfield is not a community that often gets a lot of notoriety, good, bad, or other. And, yesterday, just seeing all the news chyrons with, terror in West Bloomfield saying, it was just utterly surreal, to think that, the first time that, most people in the country and in the world had heard of our community was because of this attack. And so what I want to say to people here in West Bloomfield, but also across the country and the world, is I want them to know our community, not just for the hate that someone came here to do, but for the way that we've responded, and the way that we held each other up, the way that we lifted each other up, the way that we will continue to work together across communal lines to heal and to rebuild. Because that's the sort of crux and the resilience of what this community is, and what it's defined by.
And it is defined by those relationships that were strong before this, will strengthen during this, and the signs of compassion already out there in our community. It is unique to West Bloomfield, but so many other communities in Michigan and across the globe can and will learn from that, from seeing us. What do you hope ultimately that the remainder of our country and the world learns from what they witness here in West Bloomfield, as people will come together and help each other in ways that maybe others have never seen before?
I want people to understand the power of their words. The relationship between hate speech and hate violence is cause and effect. And when we see so much anti-Jewish rhetoric proliferating and metastasizing and intensifying, particularly since the president decided to engage in military action against Iran, and we've seen a lot of people blame the Jewish community for this, for that fact. I want people to be aware that there's a very quick logical leap from blaming Israel or Zionists or AIPAC for all of the world's ills and the injustices in the world, to very quickly looking at Jewish communities here in Michigan and across the United States and Europe as legitimate targets for violence. Because if you believe that those things are wrong, and this heated rhetoric that has intensified has indicated that the Jewish community is why these things are happening, then you will do anything that you can to stop it. And that includes taking up arms and violence against Jews and Jewish institutions. So I really, really want people to understand the power of their words, the power of the arguments that they are making, and how they have the power to heal or to commit great and devastating harm. We were, I don't want to say we were lucky yesterday. We were prepared for yesterday. And that's why we saw no loss of life. The amazing response from Temple security, from Temple staff, teachers, the education, as well as WPD, WBFD, Oakland County sheriffs and the surrounding police departments. Like, we were prepared for this. And what a sad commentary on the state and the fragile state of Jewish life in the United States that we had to be so prepared. But I think we would be facing a very different scenario if Temple Israel didn't have the resources that it had and didn't have the robust training that it had. And so I just want people to understand that this is what it's like to be a Jew in the United States today, is that we have watched over the past decade as our fortresses have congealed, or our institutions have congealed into fortresses. And I think that that's painful. I think it's wrong. We shouldn't have to live this way. And I think what I'd like to say to people who are not Jewish is that I think we all have a responsibility to rectify that, to make sure that synagogues can be as open as any church can be, and that there's no difference between the way Jews can live openly in Michigan and any other type of faith community.
Yeah, hate is something that is easy to communicate and is easy to throw out into the ether, especially today in the world that we live in. But love, a lot tougher to put that effort in, and more of an impact it has on the community, as we've seen from so many acts of compassion so far in Greater West Bloomfield in the wake of what happened on Thursday. Rabbi Joshua Bennett from Temple Israel, Rabbi Ariana Gordon also providing their notes of applause to the response from security at Temple Israel, from local law enforcement, them, as well as Josh Ingberg from the Jewish Federation of Detroit, speaking on the resilience of the local Jewish community, the Temple Israel community. But you have an inside perspective on the community at Temple Israel beyond the information we'll hear in the days and weeks ahead in the wake of this tragedy and how people came together. But that community is very close-knit. It is very giving. It reaches out to other people in Greater West Bloomfield to lend a helping hand. What do you believe that we will see from the Temple Israel community as they also provide support to others in our community that are affected just by this happening in their hometown?
Yeah, well, I think, we're all, going to be waiting, for news to figure out, what is the state of the building? What is the state of, our ability to operate as a temple over the next, year or so? I think, there's a lot that temple leadership has to figure out. And, I think, that is going to be a really big opportunity, assuming, as I think we all do, that, the building won't be able to be used for quite some time. And, we have, weddings and bar mitzvahs and, social events and philanthropic events, that, other institutions across our community will have to pick up the slack in terms of hosting those very important functions. And so that's where I think we're going to see, other parts of our community have to step up. And I have no doubt that they will, because that's the West Bloomfield way.
It definitely is, as so many have already mentioned, and so many will continue to provide examples of in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Representative Arbit, thank you so much for your time as we reflect on what happened in our community.
Yeah.
Our thoughts are with you, with your family, with your community at Temple Israel and beyond in West Bloomfield. We're keeping you and yours in our hearts as we continue to react to what happened in West Bloomfield Township, get the community's stories as they provide greater connection to each other, perhaps than ever before after this some of those connections the day of, and those that experienced this together, including in many places across our community that were locked down in the immediate aftermath of this incident beginning at Temple Israel. That includes people at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library, which was locked down for safety precautions during this incident at Temple Israel. Our team's Jake Schaff is at the library now with us live. He was also at the library during that time yesterday. Jake, want to go to you and just get initially your experience when all of this was starting to develop and the library was securing people in place yesterday.
Yeah, definitely a very surreal experience, Tyler. I was right here at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. I had just started my lunch break when the news came over the system saying that they were keeping everybody in place, that there was a soft lockdown. People could still leave, but they weren't allowed back inside. And then very quickly it changed to a full lockdown from there. And of course, right after that, that's when you saw the news appear on TV of everything that was happening in Temple Israel. And we were locked down at the library for a good couple of hours. A lot of local residents there, also concerned, also looking for more information during that time. I did speak with a couple of residents while I was at the library during lockdown to get their thoughts on the situation and how they were feeling when the news first started to unfold.
Well, the first thing I saw is I happened to hear an announcement that we were locked in the library and that we couldn't leave out and come back in. And then I turned my attention to the television screen and saw that very serious incident had transpired here in West Bloomfield.
So I had seen it on the news at first, and it was just shocking because it's close to home. This is my community. My friends, my family were here almost 5 days a week studying. So to hear it was happening right across the street was very fearful, and we were just really scared, and we stayed in our spot. And it was just something, when something like this happens so close to home, it just ignites a lot of fear.
Quinton and Cadence were just two of many people that were at the library yesterday during these lockdown initiations. And kudos to the West Bloomfield Township Public Library for handling things as they did, keeping everybody safe, keeping everybody in line, and most importantly, keeping everybody informed. And I also spoke with Quinton and Cadence to hear their thoughts and to get their perspective on what this means for West Bloomfield as we respond and as we recover from something like this.
Whatever the situation is, my thing is this: I would love for everybody to be able to get along. It's unfortunate that whatever caused this event, that it would be in the heart of anyone to run a car into a building and or pull out an assault rifle or arms to harm anybody. I would hope we can really get past that and let everybody live in peace.
Hopefully they can recover, because there's a lot of temples, mosques, churches in this community, and we all have places of worship, and we don't want to have fear going into these places of worship as we live in this community.
Powerful words. Like everybody else, we want everybody in this community to stay safe, especially as we recover from what just occurred yesterday at Temple Israel. Tyler.
Yes, Jake, definitely going to need a lot of support in a number of different ways from people in the community. That compassion and kindness going to be on display and going to be very much necessary as people continue to try to get back to some semblance of normal life and help others cope with what they have experienced in our community. We thank you so much for joining us live out at the West Bloomfield Library.
Thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate it. Jake Schaff with us out at the West Bloomfield Library, our whole team out in the field all throughout the day on Thursday, and we'll continue today to get more stories of people coming together and helping each other in the Greater West Bloomfield community as we continue to react and to learn more about the incident that occurred at Temple Israel on Thursday, and more importantly about how others will be helping each other in the days and weeks ahead. That was certainly the case at the Chaldean Community Foundation yesterday, particularly across the street from Temple Israel at Shenandoah Country Club, where so many provided their support to families directly affected by the incident that occurred at Temple Israel, that attack on their community. Sharkey Haddad joins us from the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce with his perspective on the support provided by the Chaldean community. Sharkey, thank you for joining us on this sad time in our community, but what was a happy moment amongst all of the sadness of Thursday was the love that was provided to the Jewish community, to the Temple Israel community by those at Shenandoah. What does that say about the nature of the Chaldean community in West Bloomfield?
Well, the Chaldean community of West Bloomfield and the state of Michigan trace their families to what it's now called Iraq. In the 50s, 40s, many Chaldean families, Jewish families, resided in the same neighborhood in Baghdad, Iraq, and looked after one another. They looked after one another because we were both religious minorities, that we were both persecuted in Iraq. And because of that, we developed a closer relationship with Jewish families in Baghdad, Iraq. We carried that with us when we immigrated to the state of Michigan. And that's why all Chaldeans live in the same communities where the Jewish families reside and where the Jewish temples are also built. And we cannot express enough our deep sorrow over the tragic event that took place yesterday at Temple Israel, whom, by the way, are also not strangers to the 1,500 Chaldean families who are members at Shenandoah Country Club. We have developed a partnership, cooperation with Temple Israel, between Temple Israel and Shenandoah Country Club for over 20 years now. And we were so glad that we were able to provide assistance to the family, parents, and staff of Temple Israel by opening the doors of Shenandoah Country Club to them so they could gather and wait for to be reunited with their loved ones.
Sharkey Haddad is with us from the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce. One of their places of gathering, Shenandoah Country Club in West Bloomfield, is right across the street from Temple Israel. Sharkey, there's a lot to be said about the interfaith partnership and cooperation in West Bloomfield. Our community here, our religious communities here in Greater West Bloomfield put so much effort into providing that interconnection, into making those bonds between these faith communities, finding those areas of common ground where so many other places in the world are finding ways to be divided. What does that uniquely say about the character of the West Bloomfield community?
Well, you know, yesterday at 12 noon was the monthly luncheon for the Greater West Bloomfield Faith and Community Alliance, formerly called the West Bloomfield Clergy Association. And I was supposed to be there at 12 noon participating in the lunch for all the clergy leaders and community leaders sponsored by Shenandoah Country Club. And it's just amazing how this organization was having lunch at Shenandoah Country Club, and then the tragedy hits across the street at Temple Israel. But to answer your question, the West Bloomfield community has been in the past doing a great job as far as bringing people together to have a dialogue and conversation about overcoming misconceptions and stereotypes about each other as far as religious and ethnic and racial group. However, this is an ongoing task. We can never let our guard down, especially nowadays when our country is the most divisive stage in modern history. We need to be more proactive. We have been talking about why the stakeholders in West Bloomfield Township need to invest in an organization that will bring all people from various ethnic, religious, and racial backgrounds together
whenever there is a tragedy like the one yesterday. And beside our great law enforcement agency, who did a great job in responding to the tragedy yesterday, after that, there is a need for a strong organization that will bring people together and process what happened and talk about how can we work together to overcome some of the negative reports that come out of this. And I think that we will be able to do that in the near future.
And we know in times like this, there will be so much hate spewed at the Jewish community, there'll be hate spewed at the Muslim community in the result of this, as speculation runs rampant all over the globe. And Sharky, you mentioned that as being a reason why we need to come together even more in these times in West Bloomfield, knowing the nature of the West Bloomfield community, the ways it already puts efforts in to come together in times of good and in times of happiness. What makes you confident about our community that this will bring all different corners of Greater West Bloomfield culturally, religiously, and just in general, even closer together?
I feel optimistic about it only because West Bloomfield community had a head start on addressing diversity issues way before our surrounding community. For example, the West Bloomfield School District hired me back in 1994 as the community liaison, someone who would reach out to various parents from various ethnic background and religious background and help them understand all the great things about diversity. So having said that, and of course, I think that we have a head start, but I think that we need to continue that work. And I think we need to shift to a proactive mode instead of just celebrating diversity. And we will get there because we had a head start and we're doing a great job compared to other communities. And we have a police department that is doing an awesome job as far as being in the middle of various ethnic and religious groups in West Bloomfield. We in the Chaldean community, and I'm sure it's the same with other religious groups such as the Muslim community, the Jewish community, we often get phone calls from the former chief of police of West Bloomfield, Mike Patton, as well as the new chief of police of West Bloomfield, Dale Young, just checking with us. Hey, is everything okay in the Chaldean community? Are there any concerns or needs? That speaks volume. Many communities in Southeast Michigan don't have police departments who are so involved with various ethnic leadership, and we do. So that's a head start. That gives us hope that we will continue to do more things in West Bloomfield Township as far as being proactive with diversity.
Sharky, you are a leader in the Chaldean American Chamber of Commerce. Of course, we mentioned multiple times that the impact that the immediate support from the community at Shenandoah Country Club and the Chaldean Community Foundation had to those at Temple Israel. As we move forward, as communities move forward, and we see more stories of those messages and those acts of kindness from your community, what lesson do you hope others that may have not been previously familiar with the Chaldean community, both in West Bloomfield and around the world, take from the actions and from the kind words of support from Chaldeans? What can they learn as they move forward and help people in the future?
Here's what we can learn from this. While we have no control over what happens in politics, nationally and internationally, we do have control over what happens in our community. For example, Shenandoah and Temple Israel have developed partnership and programs such as JACOB, which stands for Jewish and Chaldean Opportunity Builders, 30 years ago. So the lesson to be learned is we need to do what we can do on an individual basis or on a community level in our West Bloomfield community to reach out to each other, to better understand each other's cultures and concerns and needs. Don't be shy about knocking on your neighbor's door and say, hey, I want to learn more about the Chaldean community. I want to learn more about the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Hindus, and have that conversation. And hopefully that conversation would have a ripple effect. So the family members of both sides of the individuals who had that conversation will talk to their family members and friends and correct the misconceptions that fly in that community and learn from it. So that's what I'm hoping that many people would learn from this tragedy, is to reach out to others and learn from one another.
A little bit of love can go a very long way. Sharky, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it as we continue to hear outpouring of support from across the Greater West Bloomfield community. No greater showing of that support in the immediate aftermath of what was occurring on Thursday, March 12th at Temple Israel than that right across the street at Shenandoah Country Club, as those in a community that's very different but very similar came together to help its neighbors, its friends, its family members, its complete strangers that may live down the street or maybe across the community, may have crossed paths at some point in the past and now have forever bonded in kindness and compassion, something that we don't see very often in our world today, and we saw right here in West Bloomfield at its darkest hour on Thursday, March 12th. As we conclude today, I want to talk to another religious leader in our community, as we've talked so much about the Faith and Community Alliance in Greater West Bloomfield. They were meeting at the time of these events on Thursday, March 12th at Temple Israel, finding ways to build cohesion and strengthen connections between religious communities in West Bloomfield Township and beyond. One of the people that is doing that each and every day, putting that effort in, is Rabbi Benjamin Altshuler, who joins us now on the Splash Live. Rabbi Ben, thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, good to have you on as it's a difficult time in the Jewish community. It's a difficult time in the Greater West Bloomfield community that is such a melting pot of different ethnicities and certainly religious groups. What's your message for the greater community, the wider community, in terms of how they can provide that immediate support to their Jewish loved ones, their friends, their neighbors, and others in our community after what happened?
It would be paramount to keep open lines of communication and show public support for all of our neighbors. An attack on any one house of worship is not just an attack on the Jewish community. It is an attack on the sanctity of peace in our region, of voices of calm, of our ability to have a united front. So anything we can do to avoid becoming bystanders. I was able to follow the news online, and what really struck me as many people were sharing voices of support and concern, many others were commenting that it was all a hoax, that this was just another example of antipathy coming around the war in the Middle East. And I cannot comment on the politics that motivated this attack, but I do know that we are one state, we are one community, and we're looking for ways to remain connected. We're looking to build bridges, not tear them down, and certainly not create further displacement between the diversity that really makes our community beautiful.
And there are so many connections between the different religions, the predominant religions in our communities, and others that also make up West Bloomfield and make up the state of Michigan, a very diverse place in its own right. Rabbi Benjamin, you're from Bay City, but do communicate with our religious leadership here in the Greater West Bloomfield area. You help to find those connections. And one thing that does play into the story of every different religion, the lesson of every different major religion in our community and beyond, beyond is finding those connections and helping people in their time of need. How important is it in times like this that other communities like yours in Bay City, which is relatively far away from us in West Bloomfield, but others close and far reach out across their own communities too to provide that level of support, even if they're not close to Greater West Bloomfield?
We have seen that these attacks, while they occur locally, are effects that ripple outward. And this is, of course, not an isolated incident. We recognize that there was a similar attack in Grand Blanc, Michigan, an attack on a house of worship. And of course, this comes on the heels of attacks on synagogues in Jackson, Mississippi, on attacks in Toronto, Canada. And so clearly, this is not a unique occurrence here in West Bloomfield or even here in the state of Michigan. Anything we can do to connect with our neighbors and join a dialogue offering prayers that we can find peace locally will also have ripples outward, just as much as these acts of hatred, these acts of contrition that can really bring our collective impact. Perhaps so too can efforts towards a peaceful dialogue.
So often it's our religious leaders that provide that immediate support to those in their community that are affected by tragic incidents like this, by traumatic incidents like this. And you see it often too from other people across faiths when they do reach out, just how big of an impact that can have on people. What's your message in terms of people spreading kindness in this time? What is your suggestion for them making those first steps to make that reach out across maybe religious lines, ethnic lines, or others that tend to divide us in communities to bring people together?
Well, it starts by talking to the people who are closest to home, talking to your own neighbors, talking to your own family, and seeing, what they think about this. And being quick to speak up when you see rhetoric that, contributes to division. When we don't speak up, when people rely on hateful tropes, it gives permission for such things to escalate. So I would start there. Reach out to those who are being quiet and find out why they are not bothered by such frightening images on our TV screens and in our neighborhoods. Reach out to people who are different from you to let them know that you're listening. Sometimes it takes more listening than speaking to make sure that all voices are heard.
And Rabbi, we see so often times like this also, especially when a religious institution is attacked, that there is so much jarring across different ethnic groups, across religious groups. There's so much hate speech that comes out, not only toward the community that was under attack, but from people across other communities that may be allegedly related, and so on and so forth. And that really is another extension of the trauma and the tragedy that comes from an attack like this. What is your lasting message for people, as hate tends to initially prevail in these, but to make love ultimately be what prevails in the wake of what happened at Temple Israel?
Central to my religion is the idea of loving your neighbor, finding ways of treating others in a way that is not hateful, but it rather finding opportunities to pursue justice. These are things we can do every day in small ways. It does not take grand gestures to impact the world. It takes one step and an open hand to make sure that everyone feels welcome, secure, and in a place where they can express their identity freely. I hope that as we approach the Sabbath, Shabbat, which begins this evening for the Jewish people around the world, that we will find friends and neighbors willing to offer those prayers with us, and that people everywhere will find this is one more act of hate in the world, that is too many. And when we can all agree that, our common good is pursued when we join hands rather than take up arms, I think we'll all feel a little bit more secure and a little bit safer when we close our eyes at night.
Very strong message for us in our community, and as we connect communities across Michigan from West Bloomfield to Bay City and all around the world as well. Rabbi Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
From Bay City, Michigan, connecting right here to Greater West Bloomfield as the interfaith community in West Bloomfield Township continues to reach across their religious lines, across community lines to provide support as many mourning and many coping with what happened at Temple Israel on Thursday. That is going to conclude our programming today on Civic Center TV as we conclude our coverage for this week live in reaction to what had happened at Temple Israel on Thursday, March 12th. Messages of love outpouring to West Bloomfield from across the world, from within our community. Shows of kindness and compassion immediate on the day of and continue now, will continue into the future, and provides us with perhaps a lesson that we can employ in our own lives, that when so much tragedy, when so much hate, when so much lack of kindness lives around us, we have the choice to decide to be different. We see that so often in this community. It's what makes Greater West Bloomfield so special. It's what makes Greater West Bloomfield so committed to embracing its diversity. Perhaps gone are the days where you can leave your door open and your neighbors will come over and visit regularly, or where you go somewhere where everybody knows your name. But that doesn't mean that has to go away permanently. That doesn't mean we can't reach across lines that divide and create lines that join us together. Often what we see in communities like Greater West Bloomfield is when we're in the worst of times, we see the best in each other. And our hope here at Civic Center TV, my hope personally for you, is that we see a lot more of that than the opposite. Thank you for joining us, for bearing with us and our community in this time in Greater West Bloomfield. Our thoughts are with you. Our thoughts are with the Temple Israel community, the Jewish community, and all across Greater West Bloomfield after what had happened in our community. Hopefully, together, we'll be even stronger as we continue our lives close to home. For Civic Center TV, I'm Tyler Kieft. Thanks for joining us.